record, or who needs to record for this?
Yep, I just started.
Lisa's the boss,
Perfect.
so
Thank
she'll
you.
be recording.
Okay. I have recording privileges. It's on.
Thanks.
Okay. So today from the Crane Pig Plan Kaizen, we have Joseph, TJ, Stan, and myself here representing the group. And as we go along, I'm going to be calling on them to present some of these parts right here. The objectives we have for this meeting today is we want to be able to help you learn how to create and submit a Crane Pig plan, expand your PM knowledge on the logistics, liability, and safety of this very important process. And also, we're going to try to show you some of the tools that we have made available and try to walk you through the process, or the tools can walk you through the process from beginning to the end so that you can successfully create a PIC plan for submittal. Now, some of you may have the questions, who needs to know this? Okay, so Joseph, why don't you help us telling everybody who needs to know this information here?
Yeah, so like in our different departments, we have different people that are responsible for the crane pig plan. Some departments hardly ever even have a crane, such as Vegas, because it's really hard to get a crane on the strip and whatnot. But you know, SPD, we frequently need cranes because we do leave out bays or we're hoisting materials into occupied buildings. And so our PMs and SPD are the ones that actually assemble and submit the crane pig plan. And then obviously for the big side, it's typically handled by your superintendent on the project. And then, you know, the why do we need to know this? So a couple of things is that a lot of times in the SPD world, we're not really released to begin because they're waiting on a permit or something. And then all of a sudden they finally get the green light to begin and they're just rushing and saying, hey, hurry up and get your crane pig plan submitted because we want to do it this weekend. And so there's a lot of rush to it. And if we don't know what needs to be in the packet or what all the specific things for that particular project or the proper insurance coverages, we find ourselves having to submit 2 or 3 times. And this is usually when it's critical for the schedule. And then again, for the PMs on the big side, this will be good training for you guys because if you have any questions from your GC about the crane pig plan, you'll have a better understanding of what's in it, what order does the information belong in, and how does this benefit us in the company. Again, our whole goal in this was to further educate everyone on the proper way to assemble the crane pig plan, what's important at a pre-job walk before you assemble your crane pig plan, and how do you ensure that you have proper insurance coverages and you know, considering all the other things such as underground electricity cables, FAA permits, things of that nature. So that's kind of why we tackled this one.
Thank you, Joseph. So hopefully if you are sitting there saying, what do I have to do with this? Now you got the answer. If you're a PM, a field guy, a superintendent, somebody who's eventually going to run across a crane pig plan, it will be good for you to know these things. Why? Well, at least for myself, back in 2005, when I first ran into my first crane pig plan, I didn't even know what it was. I looked for information on the computer from big jobs on the big side, and I couldn't find any good information to help me. So it took me about 2 weeks to put a crane pig plan together, and then it took me another 2 weeks to resubmit many times until I got it right. And I still don't get it right. So it is good knowledge for you if you're a project manager. If maybe you don't have the responsibility to put crane pig plans together, but at least you'll be able to assist anybody who comes into this responsibility later on. Now, so we're going to move to the tools. The crane pig plan Kaizen was centered on, and first of all, there was no standard. There is no standard right up until now. of how to put a crane pick plan together for submittal. The company didn't have that. So now we came up with some tools that hopefully are gonna be useful for most of us here that have this responsibility. First of all, we created what is called the Pre-Hoist site checklist. And this is something that happens early on when you already know that you are gonna need to hoist, or if you have a live-out bay or anything that has to do with the crane. This happens early on in the process. So to walk us through that, TJ is going to show us what this form is like. Everybody can see it right there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we got it.
go ahead, TJ.
What's cool about this is that the whole team got together with LA and everything else, and just kind of combined it, everything that we need. And this little pre-hoist checklist will make it a hell of a lot easier. So when you're on site and you're looking, it just lets you remember the little things, the size of the crane. Are you going to need a platform? So if you go down, there's little drop downs. You know, if you need a boom lift, go down to boom lift. Other picking equipment. Yeah. It's just little check marks, and you can do this. I believe Rafa said that you can do this on your phone or your iPad. So you don't got to carry around like I would a piece of paper and put yes. Just kind of makes it easy. And just makes you remember what to really look for, you know. Is there, you're going to need flaggers, the street's crowded. And as you just go down and walk through it, you know, you come into what Joseph was talking about, the power lines. Is there underground problems? Is there, so when we do that walk, we normally do this walk with our crane vendor. It's normally Big E, or down south, I think, uses
Bragg.
Bragg? Is it Bragg
Yeah.
down there?
Yeah, right.
So, and it's a friendly, it's easy form. And I haven't hit it yet. I haven't tried it. I want to try it. But just, and keeps going down, and just friendly reminders to what you need to do.
And this was added to the field docs tab, I believe.
Correct. This form is already part of the field docs, and obviously this form once
sorry guys, real quick. The field docs thing, it's going to be added for all new jobs moving forward. So
yes.
Any job that already has a job folder on the server, it will need to be added manually. So if you need help with that, ask me, Joseph, Roberto, or TJ, and we can help you out.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And obviously this, since it happens early on in the job, this is going to be filled out with all the particulars for the job. And if the field personnel need to go back and look at some of the special comments on each of the line items, or add any other comments that the PM needs to watch out for, special permits and all that, that is going to be there also available for all of you guys. So each of the items here that you're looking for has drop-down menus so that you can fill it out, or you can print it in and fill it out by hand at the job site. So thank you, TJ. This is one of the additions to the tools that you have now to be able to create a crane pick plan. I'm going to
we're all
post
the
this
same
one.
now.
What's that?
All the companies are the same now. We're working with the same form.
Correct. And before, everybody was just doing what they knew or whatever information they got.
We even had we even had precast. Rodney Wade was representing precast, and they're using that form now too.
Correct. This is one. I think this is one of the Kaizen. The first Kaizens where precast was able to join us and try to put together an effort that, you know, made a process in line through the whole company. So the second tool that we want to show you guys is the crane vendor document submittal checklist. Anybody who's putting together a crane pick plan, there is quite a few documents. Some are critical, some are not as important, but are needed for the submittal. And there is a checklist now that you can go through as you put the crane pick plan together that you can refer to and make sure that you have everything you need from your vendor. And then there's other documents that you got to put in there yourself. So to explain those, Stan is going to help us. And also he's going to let us know how these forms are working, because he has already put this to test. Everybody can see the crane
Yes.
in their document. Okay, Stan?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Just to piggyback what Roberto and TJ and Joseph mentioned. So the goal to this crane pick plan that we have is, for me, especially from my standpoint, is how do we minimize risk exposure for Walters & Wolff to our project site. So we developed the crane pick plan so that we established the one and foremost is the uniformity of submittals. And then the second one is the most important thing is the professionalism when we submit documentation to the highest exposure that we have in the job site, hoisting units out there. So we developed this crane pick plan procedure.
Hey, Alex.
Submittal, what I need from the vendor, and it's a lot easier now. I'll just send this to the vendor sometimes, or sometimes you do a communication to the vendor and you start going step by step on what you're going to need. The most important factor to this, making sure we establish a COI establishment, name Walters & Wolff as additional certificate holder, the general contractor, and then the client. We will establish that first, and then go through to what TJ mentioned earlier. So each of these documents are actually somewhat married to each other so that you're going to have a complete product. The certifications and licensing, two factors in certifications. It's actually certification of the crane component alone. This is a Cal OSHA mandates that no crane can be established on the job site with this piece of document. There's two documents attached to this, your annual and your quad annual submittal to this. General contractors will deny your crane to be on site if you miss this particular documentation. So this checklist that you guys have here now will actually walk you through step by step. At the same time, you're going to have a reference point of how we've done previous crane pick plan. We are testing. I actually managed this to be implemented on our Cal State student housing job site. And it literally took me 30 minutes from visitation to the job site, pull the foreman outside from his day-to-day work and organize it with a crane vendor. And the beauty to this crane pick plan that we did was actually on 3 different pick locations. That means the crane's going to come in 3 different days for 3 different curtain wall tower. And it took me, and I gave the whole thing to a person that had never done a crane pick plan, established the Swiss, and he was able to gather all the documentation from the vendor, create our specific documentation, send it to McCarthy in a single submittal without kickbacks. So we know that this thing works, and right now we're actually going to be releasing this to precast of the same format, the same submittal to their precast hoist out there in Petaluma project. And we're going to be giving this to a safety manager, to a foreman, and to a project manager that have never done crane pick plans. So it's proven, it's going to work. The professionalism and submittals of our document is the key factor. At the same time, and my side is how do I limit liability exposure for Walters & Wolff.
Great, thank you, Stan. Obviously, you know, the having Stan in our Kaizen really brought a lot of knowledge, and he has been helping us a lot with all the documentation and the ideas how to put this together. And we are working on making it better. The PDCAs for these Kaizen will start sometime in the future. And as always, if anybody sees anything that we can improve, we're welcome. You're welcome to just share it with us, and we'll move along with that. Thank you, Stan. Now, you've seen that some of these, there is documents right here on this form that are sample documents for each of the line items. So I'm not going to open them here right now. I'm going to open them at the end, because it was important for anybody who's putting together these documentation, for them to see a sample of what they're supposed to be looking at, what they're supposed to be getting from the vendor. And so you will see these particular files at the end once we get this completed. Now, obviously, all the Kaizens have a Swiss, and we did put together a Swiss. And for that, I'm going to ask Joseph to go over the Swiss a little bit here. Here we go.
Okay, yeah, so without going too deep into this, we're just going to go over a high level. Basically, you start out with figuring out, what materials need to be hoisted. And then, you get your crane vendors. Step 2 is you get, once your crane vendor is chosen, then you schedule that meeting. You get the pertinent information over to them. And then the superintendent, sorry, somebody have a question? No. Okay, number 3 was superintendent sets up a job site walk with the crane vendor, invite the safety director to the meeting. Step 4, you're going to walk that job site. And this is where that pre-hoist checklist comes into play. So you'll fill out that checklist when you do your pre-hoist job site walk. And then on the 5th step was the vendor's going to submit their crane pick plan to Walters and Wolf for review. And then we have basically that table of contents with the attachments for each one. That's a good example to make sure that you have all the pertinent information that you need. So this is just we included a sample in there with what a full crane pick plan would look like. But going back up here to number 6 is Walters Wolf reviews the crane pick plan for accuracy. Then number 7, we create the initial job hazard, assessment analysis for the crane pick plan. Mm-hmm. And then we create our crane load job site travel plan, which is basically the logistics of how the crane is going to get to the building on the job site. Step 8, the Walters Wolf contact is going to finalize that logistics plan with all the documentation from above, and you're going to combine that into one package. There are things such as what kind of insurance is the job? What kind of, is there, any special OSIP, CSIP things? So there's steps in the Swiss to make sure that you're not overlooking that. Number 9 was you're going to submit to your GC for approval. And then hopefully it's just a one-time submittal. You get the approval, then you can schedule your crane and order equipment and manpower as needed. So that's pretty much how the Swiss is written.
Great. Thank you, Joseph. So with that said, there is one more step, and that is the tool that we created, the complete package, so that we can actually look at, anybody who's putting it together can look at a sample of what it should look like. Now, this is the complete sample, and you guys can find it in the folder for the crane pick plans. This is the submittal for approval, the list of documents included. There's 11 items right here. And as you go along, you'll see that, you can click on each of them. There's links like the 3D lift plan. It shows actual files that we have submitted on different jobs. And it shows what is the important information to look for in each of these items. The fly attachment, the charts, the document, you can navigate it. Here's the crane inspections. Stan was telling us how there is an annual and a quadrennial inspection that has to be up to date. As you can see right here, these dates are very important, and that's what the GC is looking for, making sure that all these certifications are up to date. Each of the documents, this is one of the very important ones, the crane insurance certificate. A lot of times they will just send a generic insurance certificate showing that there is coverage, but this information is really important right here. It should include the owner of the building, the GC, it should include Walters and Wolf, and also the client. The insurance paper could be probably a document that's going to be 15 to 20 pages long. However, based on my experience, I've submitted this cover page, and that is sufficient. You may have to submit the whole thing, but that is up to, you know, whoever you're dealing with. Sometimes some GCs are more strict with the requirements, and they have different requirements for different jobs. This is our Walters and Wolf job hazard analysis form. This is what we are using now, and every single crane pick plan is taking this particular form, and it's adding it to the standard documentation. There's going to be some revisions to this form that will come back later on in the year, but right now this is our finished product. There is some optional things that you may find, like site plan logistics and GC specific crane pick plan documentation. Sometimes, like Noble, they always submit their own forms, and they want us to put together all the information in their forms, which is basically the same thing that we're doing with our submittals. And what we're going to be pushing for is for our Walters and Wolf package submittal to be accepted as presented and submitted, because now we have a document that is complete. Anybody can access it, look at it. This is one of the crane certification for each of the operators. I only included one page right here, but usually the vendor will send us sometimes 10 and 12 pages. And the reason for that is that they don't know who's going to be at the job site on that particular day that we're doing the crane pick, the actual hoisting. So they have to send all their certificates, making sure that they cover all their operators.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be an issue because not all operators are equal. So you get some that are really in tune with what we do and some that are not.
Exactly. And usually, and thank you for that, Paul. Usually, Biggie and some of our crane vendors, they know what we do and they try to send the same operators. But like Paul says, sometimes that's not going to happen. And there's no way for us to know which one is good and which one is not. At least that's not something that we tackle on this crane pick plan. So here's your finished document. It is located in the same folder where you can find it and give it to somebody. You can give it to somebody who'd never done a crane pick plan before. And like Stan said, it shouldn't take too long following these steps to be able to put a crane pick plan together.
So I got a question while you're on that page.
Yeah.
Biggie and all the crane companies, they usually submit their own schematics for their crane with all the weights and the 3D view and their reach, their circumferences, all of that is usually submitted by the crane company. I'm assuming that we're gonna insert that into this report, right? We're not gonna make it for them.
Correct.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. The only thing though, Paul, during the walk, the foreman will actually determine where he would like, or the superintendent, where he would like the sequence of the lift.
Sure. Yeah.
And the numbers will come into that. I would like to add one thing that's kind of somewhat important that you're probably going to come across in the project. It's called the Outrigger ground bearing pressure. Just like TJ said, that's very crucial because we don't know what's underneath the ground, right? We're going to start seeing this in some of the buildings when we set up a crane in on top of the fire lane, and it's going to need some shoring reinforcement in that one. So we don't dispatch a crane without the GC submitting back to us the crane placement, because that crane might be fit only for 40-ton specs, and we're sending out a 90-ton crane. So the outrigger and the shoring don't meet to each other. So that's why this is very important as well.
And that's why in the initial checklist that we walk with the crane vendor and the GC and also Walters and Home Safety, we walk the job site, and then it is determined based on what we're going to be hoisting, what size crane we need. That decision is not left to the PM or the field guy. We tell the vendor what we're hoisting, and they then tell us what the needs are as far as what size crane and what capacities we need. So all these right here are documents that our crane vendor will submit, and we in time will submit it to the GC. If there is anything that has to be modified, then our crane vendor has to make the adjustments.
And Biggie's good about that. I think so is Bragg. I think they use the same program.
Yeah, I think they do, because when you got that, I thought that was from Biggie, to be honest with you.
That one might be, I don't know.
Yeah, it looked like it was. Yeah, it's exactly what they turn in.
Oh, this are you talking about these files?
Yeah.
Yeah, that all this is from Biggie. All these
these
documents are from Biggie, except, well, yeah, these ones, the 3D lift plans are from Biggie. And I think this one came from LA on a job that Stan sent us. And
Hey, Roberto, can you go back up on the 3D lift plan? You could actually identify on the bottom left corner, it will let you know which application they're using. It will tell you in the bottom left corner that 3D lift plan is created by who. So I think
yeah, right here.
Bragg and Big is using the format.
Yes. Unfortunately, it doesn't say right there. Oh yeah, well, it says Dan
Rainford,
Rainford. Yeah, so it is Biggie.
It says it on the bottom.
It would be good for them to put their name there. We know who to blame.
This is on the crane.
Yeah.
Inside the crane.
Good
It does.
Lisa. We didn't see that. Okay, so that's the document. That is the tool the tools that we have, the pre-hoist site checklist, the crane vendor document submittal checklist, the Swiss, and the crane plan sample, the completed document. Those are the tools that we created in this Kaizen that we hope will be useful to anybody who will need to even probably, if not put it together, review it or help somebody with it for submittal and troubleshooting if you ever come across that. So we want to get to the conclusion where I like to open it up for you guys to tell me what things did you learn that you didn't know, questions that you still have, or any suggestions for improvements. Anybody wants to share?
I didn't know Biggie had a female operator.
Always Paul.
Well, yeah, I put it on there. You know, I had a purpose when I put it on there. Yeah, but they only have one. Well, at least they have one.
Where is this on the portal? I can only find it in the lean.
I think that it's going to be posted under on the portal. It's going to be posted where that standard procedures tab, all the way at the bottom. That's the last time I saw it. crane pick plan. And eventually, we were talking about adding it to the field page.
Yeah, the
You guys
field
have
docs,
some-
so
You guys have some documentation for cranes in there, and it would be good to put it there also. But that will come later.
Hey, Roberto,
two-
well, this is probably maybe more for Stan. So a lot of these documents in here, when we actually get this rolled out and we're using this, is the intent to send kind of all of our docs to Biggie to review and then give us stuff to insert, or do we just go through these steps, do we normally do with Biggie, and then insert that into this for a complete package? Is any of this, should any of this be reviewed by Biggie or the crane operator for any reason?
Most of these documents come from the crane vendor, Paul.
Right, I was talking about some of our stuff. The
Well-
stuff that Stan had in there for like all the safety and all that.
That's gonna be constantly reviewed by me, Paul. And so once it's in the portal,
Mhm.
it just kind of assume that it's already been approved. And then if I see some changes, the two changes that I'm looking at on the crane, like perfect example next year, there's some changes in the law. That's probably the only time you're gonna start seeing Walters and Wolf documentation is gonna change. Before we did this Swiss, it was very amazing that I presented mine and TJ presented his. They were actually the same documentation. It was kind of very cool to see that. But no, the changes for Walters and Wolf documentation, you guys will be aware of it. So if you guys go to the
Okay.
portal, that's going to be the live document.
So to kind of piggyback on what Paul was saying, once this package is put together and we submit it to the customer and they're all good with it, should this, then the whole package be given to the crane company as well? So they have a complete approved package as well.
No, they should already have it, Lisa. The only way the crane company is going to get a submittal, like for example, if I review a crane plan and I don't agree on the radius because something changed at the job site, I will actually kick it back first to the vendor,
Right.
and then whatever I submit to the GC, the crane vendor will already have that in their crane.
So there's not like a full record set that just goes back. It's, he has
Right.
his approved.
The
based
minute
on
they approve it
comments
to
he's
Walters and
made,
Wolf.
and that was included. Okay.
One of the things that we added now is that since, I mean, now that we have Stan and he's more involved with this, every submittal that we're doing, he's being copied on it. So he'll be reviewing this, making sure that all of these documents that are part of the base submittal, and of course, as it says right here in the cover page, you may need some other documentation, but you're gonna know that depending on the job that you're doing and the requirements. This didn't cover right here special certifications that you may need, or anything that has to do with critical picks. But that's something that Stan's going to be reviewing because he's going to be copied on all that, any completed crane pick plan that's being submitted.
I know in the past I was on a project and then some of the crane certificates or approvals, maybe it was for clearance because it was near Moffett Towers, but they expired like midstream of the campus. So we had to get new certifications. Would you, for something like that, would you resubmit a whole package again or just like an addendum with just the new certificates?
We're actually just, that's a very, very good question, Lisa, because we see that quite often here. We're just actually going to resubmit the inspection of the crane and make sure we just notify the GC. The only time that we do resubmit a crane pick plan if the crane is actually moving somewhere else or the whole lifting changes. But for the inspection, we can just do a regular email chain.
Okay.
I'd like to just chime in on a couple things. One, this submittal going back to the crane company, since the crane company's putting this package together, we're submitting it getting it, hopefully approved by the GC, right? We get it returned, hopefully, stamped approved or approved with comments. I think it would be good, and you guys in this group that put this Kaizen together can maybe talk about it more offline, but I think you need to consider sending that back to the crane company, because it may come back to us approved as noted, and there's a couple little notes in there or something, and we don't send it back to the crane company. And even if there's no notes, I think it closes the loop. Anybody who puts something together and submits it should get an approval back. So I know they're kind of submitting it to us and we submit it to the GC. We get it back from the GC. I think we need to submit it back to them, just to close that circle. And that's up to you guys, but we've talked about that a little bit here. I think that's something you should look at, and maybe part of the process should be returning that package back to them, a copy of it with all the GC's notes or stamped by the GC approved. And then the other thing was, I think TJ asked where this would live. I know, the Swiss portion of it, we need to put on the portal, and Joseph obviously is familiar with that. You clean that up after we're done here, and then he'll submit it to Watson. It'll go on the portal under the standard procedures. I'm sure under field or PM, you'll have to decide where to put it, but
yes.
And then the rest of this package, you guys will have to figure out where that lives. Is that going to go in field docs on every job or what? But that's the Swiss part of it will go into the standard procedures.
Correct. Thank you, Tom, for that comment. And we are gonna, I took a note right here regarding your comment. And I know that in the past, when I called Biggie or our crane vendor to schedule the crane, it's just a verbal. Okay, we got an approval on the crane pick plan. Just send me a crane next week, right?
Yep.
And they take that. But maybe, yeah, we have to look at sending some formal documentation of an approved pick plan. Most of the time, they don't stamp anything, or the GC doesn't stamp anything saying, yeah, this crane pick plan is approved. They just send it back. Most of the time, we just comment or for resubmittal, or they just say this crane pick plan is approved. So, but yeah, to close that loop, it will be good to possibly consider doing that.
That way they can, if there's some little comment somewhere in there the GC made on page 17 or something, they got a copy of it back. That way they can't say they missed something or we didn't tell them something. And even if there's no comments approved, I just think it closes a loop. That's all.
Yeah, 90% of the documents is something that they're providing. There's no way we can provide any information on the cranes they're using. So you're right. It would make sense to send it back to them, letting them know that it is approved. And we'll talk about that in our first PDCA.
Are we doing subcontract agreements with our crane guys, or is it just a PO? Because if it's a subcontract, I mean, this would be a good doc to attach to that.
I think it's just a PO.
So I thought, well, yeah, that's what I've been using too. I was just curious if we're advancing that with Biggie.
I thought it got
that's what we're
switched.
doing now, but
If there's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought it got switched that they were subcontracts because the operator's performing something on site, so it was a
Right.
liability thing. So
Yeah, that's what I
pretty
thought.
sure
I
we
think
have to
Joseph-
write
I think
subcontract.
Joseph was working on, if he hasn't completed already, MSAs for the crane guys we use all the time.
That is correct. Up until December or January, I think, we were just operating with POs. I don't know if we have, I haven't ordered a crane all this year, but I know that the idea is to switch them to a subcontract deal now, not just
Yeah.
a PO.
There's labor being performed on site, so it's got to be a subcontract.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a master subcontract already. with Biggie?
There might be, Lisa. I just don't know if Joseph finished those. I know that that was something he was going to work on.
I know it's in the works. It was along with Biggie, and they were trying to see what other crane company they were going to include to not just create one for Biggie. But yeah, this is in the future. That's what we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, because I did my job with the PO with them, but I thought going forward it would be subcontracted. It makes more sense to do it that way.
Yeah, and then when we send the subcontract sign, then we can send the approved crane pick plan with
Yeah.
that, right? Yeah, that would be another item for discussion also. Any other questions, suggestions?
This is well done. This is a really good job.
Well, thank you, Paul. Anything else, guys? Because this is what we have. Hopefully, it's going to be beneficial for somebody. And if not, it was beneficial for me.
Thank you, Roberto. You guys did a really good job. I'll save the recording on the portal under drafting training. Down on the very bottom of the left-hand side is where the videos will go. So I will attach it there as well. So if anybody needs to reference back to it or know anybody that missed this, they can go there. Thank you very much, though. Really appreciate it.
Okay, guys, that's
Nice job.
what we have. Thank
Nice
you.
job.
Good job, bro.